Well, welcome along on this Hogmanay evening to the state of Scottish football. It is our Hogmanay special. It is not only an excuse, sadly, that one has been retired. But I do have these two jokers with me. It's Craig Leach and Greg Playfair, lads. How are you doing?
Good, mate.
Yeah,
Definitely looking to
excellent.
provide more entertainment than only an excuse has in the last few years, anyway.
Do you know what? I thought that the kind of farewell one was the best of a bad bunch over the last couple of years, but it's something that definitely ran its course.
No, definitely.
I think it went downhill ever since Alistair McGowan left about 20 years ago. So,
you are now showing your age, mate, because I don't even remember that far back, Greg. Look, we were here on Christmas Eve and we took you through the first part of our team of 2021. We will be going through part two, which is our midfield and forward line. And before we do get to that, I do want to ask the lads, because I did ask David and Glenn the other day, what has your highlights been of 2021 in Scottish football? Greg, I'll start with you. The boys gave one for their respective teams and one on the international basis. So we do have the both sides of the Edinburgh divide in here. Let's see if one of you gets one over on the other.
It could be easy to pull cheap shots, but no, I think for me, my highlight has been the sort of rebirth of John Souttar. Obviously, I think in terms of Hearts championship season, if you look at the start of 2021, the knives out for Robbie Nielsen. The style of play was terrible after that defeat to Brora. But then we went to a back three, coinciding with John Souttar's return to the side. We finished the championship season quite strongly. We started the league season quite strongly. Again, I'll not make a wee dig towards your club side there, Colin, but obviously John, with his redemption of scoring the winner in that game, and then ultimately ending up in the national side as well towards the end of the year. So for me, my personal highlight has sort of been the sort of return of John Souttar, and that kind of falls nicely with the international, with the game against Israel. Again, fantastic time to be a Scotland supporter, where the stadium's rocking towards the end of the game as well, which again you don't often see too much. You always see the sort of Mount Florida Loyal sort of leave Hampden Park quite early. So for me, that was kind of my highlight there.
I do have to say, just before we go to Craig, I was looking, and a big shout out to SPFL Media Watch on Twitter, who provides all the sort of TV breakdowns. That game against Israel was watched by nearly 600,000 fans on Sky, and that's the highest Scottish audience that's been not on terrestrial TV for a number of years. So it does show that the fan base is certainly getting back behind the national team. Craig, apart from being on this fantastic show with myself and Greg, what has been your highlights of 2021?
I think club-wise, it's been quite a roller coaster year for Hibs, in terms of, obviously we got to numerous semi-finals and finals and didn't win a thing. I thought that would have been Greg's highlight. The Hearts highlighted 2021 was Hibs getting so far and not making it. I think for me, it probably would be that sort of finishing third. We've not seen it for a number of years since Tony Mowbray was there, and the style of play wasn't great, but we managed to, for once, we've seen a Hibs side last season anyway that was able to grind results out, when usually that wouldn't be the case. It'd be we'd go 1-0 up and we'd just falter. We almost turned into it was horrible to watch at times, but like a Derek McInnes Aberdeen, and it was successful. Obviously moving on to the latter part of 2021, it's not been as great. I think to probably continue Greg's team would be the just the complete improvement of Martin Boyle. Martin Boyle came to Hibs almost 7 years ago now, and the player that he's became versus the player that he was in the beginning is just night and day. Like, his importance to Hibs and also to the Australian national team as well. Like, when he first joined Hibs, he could never have imagined, one, still being at us, I would think, and two, being a full international. So yeah, it's probably the sort of continued improvement in Martin Boyle for me.
If you watched the Christmas Eve special, you saw my take on the highlights of 2021, so I'll not go into that again, but I will ask some questions on your guys' take. First of all, Greg, Hearts back in the Premiership. A lot of Hearts fans will say rightly where they belong after the fiasco that was the league being called a couple of years ago. Is there still a bit of bitterness over that, or do you think that's been put to the side now and everybody's kind of back on the path of just concentrating on the fortunes of the team?
I mean, well, you look at recently the two sort of teams in the league that have asked for postponements being Dundee and St Mirren, and you'll know Hearts fans' views on them, where all those sort of tweets on social media have been like, take your medicine and there you go. And yeah, listen, there is still a bit of risk. I think when Robbie Nielsen's been interviewed as well, he's mentioned that as sort of motivation towards them. We've seen in games when we play Dundee as well, there's always that bit of needle. But you know, I think the SPFL, you know, we could have a whole show about them in terms of their inadequacies and how they handle things. But how it's handled, yeah, I think there is always going to be a bit of needle for Hearts this season. But given the start we've made, it's kind of surpassed the expectations of the club. I know publicly they've said top 6, but kind of more privately it was looking towards European football. And again, for a lot of Hearts fans as well, that does mean finishing above Hibs, whether that's in 3rd or 4th, as long as you're above Hibs. But given the strong start to the season, I think now a lot of expectations will be maintaining 3rd.
Yeah, and you can hear it in the Hearts fans when they're in the terraces. That fantastic cover of the ABBA song. Don't know if you want to give us a blast of that, Greg. But basically, the Jambos are on their way to Europe in July is the kind of cusp of it. But that is the sort of belief within the fan base now, is that considering the start they've had, it's just about maintaining it through this latter half of the season.
Yeah, it's about adding acquisition. Nielsen and Ronald Joe Savage are Spawn director, who again you could argue has been the signing of the season for Hearts over the last year. You know, with the overhaul and the recruitment, which again used to be John Murray, who was a youth scout, was a youth coach, and was almost going back to his contacts, asking for agents who's available. So there's a lot more method and strategic with this. You know, we're scouting guys from Australia. We're now linked with another player in Japan as well, a striker. So I mean, for Hearts, it's about adding quality rather than just signing guys who are available and almost just looking for a year's contract. So yeah, if they can, I said kind of off air as well, defensively, that's kind of my worry for next season. Obviously, we've not got a goalkeeper, a back 3 or wing back signed past the summer. But if we can get a lot of guys tied in longer term deals and look to bring in 1 or 2, another striker for Boyce, and obviously we've got the right wing back in already, I think we should hopefully, all things considered, finish 3rd.
And I think what we're going to we'll set a target for this video. We'll say if this video gets 50 likes, Greg will come and give us a blast of the ABBA cover of the Hearts song. How's that? We're going with that? Live on air next week?
I'll do that, of course.
There it goes. Right, we'll see how that one goes. Craig, let's take a look at Hibs. And to be honest, if someone said to me at the start of the season that Jack Ross wouldn't be the manager come Christmas time, I'd have been totally surprised. But considering the form, I don't think there was many other options, was there?
It's a strange one. I mean, there was a lot of the issue that Jack Ross had was that last year, obviously, with the semi-final against Hearts, the semi-final against St Johnstone, the final against St Johnstone, his back was already up against the wall with a certain element of the Hibs support. Allied to the fact, like I said, there was more of an emphasis on grinding out results than, you know, it was more about substance rather than style. So I think there was always an element of the support that didn't really take to him. Myself personally, I thought it was harsh that he got sacked when he did. You know, especially when you look at, you know, we just given new contracts to Jake Doyle-Hayes, Josh Campbell, Paul Hanlon, Lewis Stevenson. He himself had just signed a new deal in July. But maybe it's a sign that Ron Gordon's not willing to, you know, settle for mediocrity. I think you can see in the, you know, the appointment that we've made in terms of Sean Maloney, it is a bit of a gamble, but, you know, he's brought, you know, Sean Maloney's played at the highest level. He's also coached at the very highest level. His assistant has been a manager in his own right. You know, they've both been incredibly successful players at both club level and international level. So I was disappointed at the time, but, you know, looking forward from it, you know, the 2 games that have been since, you know, Maloney's got off to an absolute flyer and, you know, long may it continue. I mean, I was looking at the stats of the Dundee United game on Boxing Day compared to the League Cup game when we played them at Tannadice back in September. we had less possession then, and we only made about 300 passes in the game at Tannadice. The game on Boxing Day there, we've doubled our passing output. We've also doubled the pass, about maybe a 22 or 23% increase in passing accuracy as well. That's a lot to manage in such a short space of time. So it shows that if we can get the players in that Maloney can work, obviously we're not going to be getting the likes of De Bruyne or Lukaku or Hazard or that, but if he can input his philosophy onto the players that we've got, it only augurs well for the future. And I'm really, really excited to see where, we could go under Maloney.
Obviously, Maloney's next game will be his return to Celtic Park on the 16th of January. Is it 14th of January, 16th of January?
What was it, 17th?
The Monday night. It's Monday night football under the lights at Celtic Park. And we know what's going to happen, don't we? Caldwell, Maloney, they're just going to lie down to Celtic, aren't they?
No chance. No, I don't think that. Maloney doesn't seem to be one of the. He doesn't seem like a Neil Lennon kind who'll encourage questions about his former club in his press conferences.
No, I mean, that's a joke before anybody jumps on top of that, by the way. It is an interesting appointment, as you say, Sean Maloney coming in, but he has worked with Roberto Martinez and the best national side in the world. What I think will be interesting as well is that connection that Gary Caldwell has with the City group down south. He was working as a loans manager at Man City. So it'll be interesting to see how many of the City youngsters maybe make their way up the M8 up towards Easter Road in January. So certainly exciting times for both Hibs and Hearts. Exciting times for most teams in the league. I did see a report today that Callum Davidson was going to be given as much money as he needed to keep that St Johnstone side up. And having watched them play Celtic the other day, I think tens of millions is perhaps needed because they were shocking. Less said about that. Let's talk about the team of the year. Now, we covered part one in the Christmas Eve episode. And for anyone that didn't see it, I will quickly go over the rules. Basically, we asked all of the contributors here on A State of Scottish Football to produce their team of 2021. To be eligible, you had to have played in Scotland at some point during 2021. So you will find some players have since departed or have only just signed in the summer. But their impact's been so great that the guys and the girls have considered them as part of their team of the year. You have a maximum of 3 players from the one club. So that way there'll not be a full team of Celtic or Rangers or Hibs or Hearts. It is 3 from the one club. And if a player has transferred between clubs in the year of 2021, it is the team that they finished the year with that is considered as their team, and that is part of the 3. So on the first part, we picked our defence and goalkeeper, and the back 5 was Craig Gordon, James Tavernier, John Suter, Jason Kerr, and Josh Doig. 2 from Gorgie and 1 from Leaf in the back 5 already, Greg. Hearts 2-1 up getting into the second half. Are you confident that you'll see another Hearts player coming into this squad?
Probably not, unless Liam Boyce can make a sneaky appearance in, which I don't think so.
And Craig, Josh Doig, rightly deserved to be in there at left back?
I would say so. It was his breakout season last season. He'd spent this sort of 6 months prior to lockdown, the initial COVID lockdown on loan to Queen's Park, and by all accounts done well. And he got given his chance last season. He's took it. He's obviously got himself into the Scotland under-21 squad as well. Been touted for multi-million-pound moves down south. So no, I think he's richly deserved. It would have been between him and Barisic anyway. I think there wasn't really much else coming for that area in Scotland over the last 12 months.
No, definitely. I wouldn't have seen a Diego Laxalt getting put in there or anyone else like that. So we are playing the formation of 4-3-3. So we'll have 3 midfielders and 3 in our forward line. And we're going to start with the first of the midfielders. And because he is the first player to receive votes from everybody in the State of Scottish Football team, I'm going to give him the captaincy for this year. It is Celtic captain Callum McGregor, 14 votes out of 14. He captains this team as well. Greg, what is it about Callum McGregor that endeavours himself not only just to Celtic fans, but to fans of teams all across the league?
I think what you would say in terms of the latter part of this season and latter part of last season is it's always sort of seen as kind of in the shadow of Scott Brown. Scott Brown's been there for a decade at Celtic Park, the midfield general. But as an outsider looking in, I always felt that Callum McGregor played his best football when he was further back and in that Scott Brown role, because McGregor's got the ability to play forward passes, to move with the ball, to get the tempo moving as well. Whereas kind of Scott Brown, again, not to sell him, was more of a midfield spoiler. So you've kind of got a real deep line playmaker there where, last season wasn't as great for him, but I think he was stepping out the shadow. I think the Euros there probably really helped him going into it, being part of that Scotland squad. Again, a midfield with a littered of talent. You've got Scott McTominay, you've got Alexa Billy Gilmore in there as well, where Callum McGregor's had to step up his game, so it was a real positive time. And then coming on the back of it there, where he's been asked by Ange Postecoglou to be the captain as well, he's really stepped up for me. And I think in terms of that midfield, it's transformational. I know, we could pick out 3 or 4 players, which again we might talk about some other Celtic players in this team. But for me, he's really lifted his game. He's really led as a captain should in terms of on the pitch with his performances. So, he's really drove the team on, and for me, I think he's richly deserves his place in the squad.
Yeah, and Craig, when you look at it, he's been given the captaincy. He's got a new longer-term contract. There had been talks for a long time that Brendan Rodgers would be looking to maybe bring him back down and reunite him with himself at Leicester. Now, if you're talking of a Callum McGregor leaving someone like Celtic, what kind of money do you think that would fetch, and how much would it take to replace someone like that?
I think the Callum McGregor now is almost impossible for Celtic to replace. Postecoglou's really given him a new lease of life. So McGregor's been someone that I've always felt really critical of. I've never really felt like he does enough in terms of whether it be for Celtic or for Scotland. That probably coincides with Neil Lennon getting the Celtic job, because he was... I kind of disagree with Greg. I think McGregor's better just that wee bit more forward, because he shows that he can drive at defences. He scored what game was it, the Celtic Rangers semi-final at Hampden? Mm-hmm. He scored for the edge of so he can play a lot further up, and I prefer him a lot further up. And he showed that under Brendan Rodgers. I do think that Greg is right, though, that he did have to step out of the shadow of Scott Brown. Scott Brown is an imposing figure for any player at that club to try and match up to. But certainly since the Euros and then Postecoglou getting the Celtic job, I think McGregor's been a revelation both for club and country. When it came to Scotland, I felt he was a good squad player. Now he's one of the first names on the team sheet for me. And that shows the level he's had to step up to, like Greg says. When you look at the 3 sort of main competition in midfield with McTominay, Gilmore and McGinn, that's 3 players playing at the top of their game in the Premier League. McGregor's playing against, your Dundee Uniteds and Kilmarnocks and Motherwells and so on every second week. So he's done really well, and for me, he's impossible for Celtic to replace. I think you'd be looking at, a fee higher than Kieran Tierney's to get rid of McGregor.
I do think McGregor's now put his hat on staying at Celtic for the rest of his career. And as a Celtic fan, that's a great thing for me. In terms of the Scottish national team, he's definitely came on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. I think one of the things that you don't notice as much, and I think this maybe comes back to where a lot of the criticism came for Callum McGregor last year, was when you're at the game, you see the movement that Callum McGregor makes. He makes a lot of moves off the ball. He's always the one that's kind of filling in the pockets of space looking for the ball. But when you're at home, you're watching it on TV, you're following where the camera goes. And that's not always necessarily where Callum McGregor is. So when McGregor's maybe dropped behind the midfielder looking for the pass to create the space, or is moving, he's not necessarily getting picked up. And a lot of people were saying last year, well, McGregor's not creating enough. He's not getting himself into the right spaces. He's not producing as much as what he did beforehand. But then you saw, since the fans have been back in the stadium, everybody's turned around and went, hands up, McGregor's actually one of the key players, and they've taken back a lot of the criticism. So 14 out of 14 votes, he does get the captaincy, and Callum McGregor is our star man in midfield. He will be joined with a player from across the city, a player who certainly has had one of the best 6 months of his career since he's moved up here, with 10 votes out of 14. Joining Callum McGregor in midfield is Joe Aribo. Craig, what's your thoughts on Joe Aribo and especially the last 6 months under Gerrard and then into Van Bronckhorst's room?
I just think he's one of these players that, even though he plays for a rival, you want to see him on the ball because you want to see what he can do. He's I think he was sort of targeted as a big powerful midfielder when he came up for Charlton, but his technique on the ball's unreal at times. He can just glide past players, and his ability to spot a pass, but also to find himself in that sort of 18 to 24, 25 yard area where he can get a shot of it. I mean, I can't remember exactly who it was, but the goal that he scored a goal a few weeks ago, but it was just placed right into the top corner.
Yeah,
and it was that his half. So his ability on the ball, and I think the way that Rangers set up under Gerrard, especially, allowed them to get the best out of him. Obviously, the more Van Bronckhorst is on the job, he'll tweak his system to suit the players that he's got. But no, for me, Aribo is one of those players that you go, that anybody goes to the football to see. Someone that'll take men on, drive at defences, gets step overs, tries to cut inside, go outside. He can, for me, he can pretty much do it all. And I think Rangers will be hard pressed to keep a hold of him moving into next year, I think.
Yeah, Greggy arrived with a big reputation from Charlton. Lee Boyer obviously said that moving to Scottish football was downstepping for him. He arrived with a big wage as well. We believe he's on something in the region of 20 to 25 grand a week. For the first while, I don't think he quite lived up to it, but he's really settling himself into Scottish football now, and this last 6 months has certainly been, in my opinion, the best of his Rangers career.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think coming into it as well, I think also playing internationally as well. I think he's now a mainstay of that Nigeria team as well, and I think that gives a player confidence. We talked about McGregor, being a sort of mainstay now for Scotland, giving him confidence. The thing I love about Joe Aribo is that whatever position he's placed in, he's played sort of as a midfield too. He's played obviously out wide at times. Last season, 2021, he's played left back. But then I think now he's really came into his own under Van Bronckhorst in that number 10 role. Whereas, as Craig's saying, in the final third of the pitch, he can play between the lines. He's got the intelligence to bring others into play. He can hold it. He can, as you're saying, he can strike from distance as well. And yeah, I think he's playing some superb stuff. And arguably, you would say he's Rangers' most important player at this moment in time.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I mean, for years we've spoke about how Alfredo Morelos has been Rangers' most important player, their biggest asset. But I think when you look at it over the last 6 months, Aribo's sort of nudged his way into that discussion. And I would say that if it ever came to the point, and I'm not saying they do have to, but if Rangers did have to sell one of their biggest assets, the biggest bids for me would come in for Joe Aribo.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think Ryan Kent has obviously had a lot of fanfare as well from maybe traditional media outlets as well, but same with Morelos, and these Chinese millionaires want to bid 50 million, whatever it was, for him back in the day. But Joe Aribo is probably their most him and Kamara are probably the two guys that will fetch the most money for them.
Now, speaking about players who fetch money for their clubs, we do have one more midfielder to fit in there, and I've maybe given it away. He no longer plays in the SPFL. He did play for St Johnstone. Completing our midfield is Ali McCann. Now, Craig, McCann obviously left there in the summer transfer window. A fee of just over £1 million, or just under £1 million, sorry. For me, that is the absolute steal of the summer.
He was, along with Jason Kerr, those two were the sort of, the beating heart of that St Johnstone side. I've seen it firsthand with Ali McCann in both cup competitions last season. He's another one that Scotland, I think, have missed out on. With McCann going to play for Northern Ireland. He's just, he looked almost out of place in that St Johnstone team because he's not. St Johnstone are full of battlers. I mean, you look at where they are in the league, and I don't think their league position. I think their league position sort of, like you said, Colin, about watching them against Celtic, they were poor. I watched them against Hibs, they were poor. Mm-hmm. Like they are sorry to any St Johnstone fans listening, but I couldn't pay to watch that football week in, week out. Like it's, it is very much it's Derek McInnes style, but worse.
Yeah.
Again, I wholeheartedly would apologise. It's no any bitterness for the cup final.
Is there anybody else you want to try and annoy this on this podcast, Craig? That's Aberdeen, St Mirren, Hearts, Hibs, Rangers. You've not hit Celtic yet. I'm sure that's coming.
I hate everybody equally. What can I say? But no, Ali McCann sort of, belied that St Johnstone image, and he's, it's no surprise that they find themselves where they are in the league without Jason Kerr and without Ali McCann, because I think if either one of those were still there, they certainly wouldn't be anywhere near bottom of the league.
No, I mean, you look at it, the average is half a goal a game. I mean, why would you? I mean, the money that you pay to go and watch Scottish football, to watch half a goal a game, that's embarrassing, Greg. I mean, I'm not saying Ali McCann would have been scoring 10, 15 goals a season, but at least it gave another creative outlook. It gave a set-piece specialist. It gave someone who could play the ball through into the strikers. You're looking at guys like Chris Kane and Stevie May, who on their day know where the back of the net is, but they're just not getting the service this year. And obviously the signing of Butterfield's meant to improve that. But Butterfield, for me, is a very, very poor man's Ali McCann.
Yeah, and obviously Ali Crawford was brought in along with the young Cammy McPherson from St Mirren, which was kind of panic day. But you said it, still the century for me for Ali McCann. I think he's the sort of player that Celtic or Rangers probably should have pushed the boat out. Maybe not have gotten the team, or in terms of struggling for this season, but certainly one for the future. Where already now he's a mainstay of that Northern Ireland squad. He's kind of the natural successor to this as well. Again, that's no easy feat, kind of taking on that mantle. But
sorry to interrupt you, Greg, but even at £1 million, Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, they could have all been a destination for him, and it would have kept a talent in Scottish football. It wasn't as if it was out of these teams' reach, so it wasn't just Celtic or Rangers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he would take over a record signing of Mersad Bezli at Hearts, which a lot of Hearts fans would be happy for. But yeah, I think for in terms of this season, you've seen the heart of the team's out. Him and Kerr behind them as well. Wotherspoon's been out with an injury as well. Who again, that nucleus of that squad, when you're missing three, yourself from watching your sides over the years, Celtic and Hibs. If you miss three players, your better players, your team's going to struggle. And I think certainly for me, it's no surprise that St Johnstone have been on a sort of downward trajectory since his departure, along with Kerr, who's made our team as well for our state of Scottish football.
Yeah, I mean, it does show you, doesn't it, that the two key players, once you take them out that St Johnstone side, they've kind of fell apart. But as you said, they have had some injuries as well. Pardon me, sorry. First game back for St Johnstone will be against Hearts. Now, it has been said that Davidson's going to have money to spend, but when you're looking at who he's brought in already, I don't know. I think Hearts could be having a bit of a field day at Tynecastle on that first game back.
You'd hope so. I think of the time of recording here. Obviously, we've just recently played Ross County, and we could have been a few goals up in the first half. I think if Hearts have their shooting boots on, we could end up doing well against St Johnstone. But it's like anything, when a team's struggling and you want to play a team the capital size, come Hearts or Hibs. That's the one you look for in the fixture list to get your season kick-started.
Well, unless you're playing against Aberdeen, and we all know what happens when teams go up against Aberdeen this season. Maybe that's the reason why we haven't seen an Aberdeen player so far. So our midfield three is Callum McGregor, Joe Aribo and Ali McCann. There was some other mentions in there amongst the selections. We did see Glenn Kamara pick up a couple of votes, David Turnbull, Cammy Devlin picked up a vote here and there, and Benny Beningame. Overall, lads, do you think that three is the best three that we could have picked in Scotland?
I think the first two anyway, McGregor and Aribo, definitely. The last position would be a toss-up between McCann and Kamara. I think McCann maybe gets in because a lot of other votes would have went for Rangers defenders. In terms of Tavernier, I know myself, I went Tavernier and Goldson. So it would have been hard for me to get Kamara in elsewhere as well.
It does show you the importance of having a balance, though. Otherwise, we'd have been running away with a bit of this. Now, only 2 people in the whole of the team picked up a vote from every single one of the contributors. And as we move into the forward position, I guess it maybe comes as no surprise that our first forward is Japanese international Kyogo Furuhashi. 14 out of 14. There's plenty to be said about other things within Kyogo's game, but he has been a revelation in Scottish football, Greg, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, overwhelmingly for me, he's been a breath of fresh air to watch. I think in terms of how he plays a game, how he's finishing, it's just a joke. It's probably one of the best we've seen in Scottish football. Arguably since Larson, I don't know, in terms of just natural goal scoring. It just likes putting the ball in the back of the net. His pace, is just intelligence in terms of always being on the last defender. He's made some defences look a total joke, and maybe some in the opposition haven't been up to standard, but he's just looked. It's a bit like when you're playing FIFA and you are playing the game on easy mode and you're scoring 4 goals. It's so easy. It's just effortless for him, and for being a diminutive figure, he's coping very well. I think for me, as you said, the one thing in terms of criticism you would maybe give him is, in terms of just being able to stay on his feet at times. But I think this will improve him. Obviously, having 2 rounds of fixtures against all the opposition, home and away, I think he'll get a bit more street smart as opposed to playing these defenders now. But yeah, you see when he's out of the team, Celtic kind of cope so badly, and that's not saying that Celtic's team are poor. It's just how good a player he is.
Yeah, and Craig, just a point on that, when Celtic haven't had Kyogo, it's generally been the games that they've dropped points. But see, when you think on this, if you'd said to us back in the summer that Japanese international was going to come in, hit the ground running, would have scored 15, 16 goals by the time it comes to January, you'd have been saying he must be someone that other teams have looked at and missed out on before. He was such an unknown quantity. The only player that gave him a reference, and maybe it's a fantastic reference at that, was Andreas Iniesta. It just shows you that there is a market out there to be tapped. We've looked at Celtic, they're going to bring in perhaps another 3 from the J-League. Hearts are looking at bringing in players from the J-League as well. There is some untapped gems out there, and Kyogo Furuhashi definitely seems to be one of them.
Aye, and it's a shame that he, one of the games that he did happen to play recently was the game at Hampden, because I've seen it firsthand. The 2 goals, I mean, he's, for someone who, his hamstring was meant to be, being held together by blue tack, his sharpness for both of his goals was just, you can't even explain it. These 2 finishes as well. I mean, Matt Macy, as we constantly hear, is about 7 feet tall, and he got lobbed for the second goal. The first goal was just a pure instinctive finish for Kyogo, but it's that. I noticed as well, he does get caught offside quite a lot because he tries that old style Thierry Henry kind of run where he starts beyond. He starts beyond the defence and does that U-shaped run in front of them and across them. But no, I agree with everything Greg says. He's a complete live wire, and he has been a breath of fresh air. I do agree though that the one element is this, looking to be on his backside almost at any opportunity he can. And here's where I come for Celtic, Colin. You've been
I've been waiting.
No, he does need to cut out that element of his game, because that's where he can turn fans against him. I mean, when you think about players like what Gregory said, we'll talk about Larsson. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone in Scottish football says anything bad about Larsson. When I think about Larsson, I think about what a player. Like, just goal after goal after goal, drag Celtic through so many, these knife edges. You think back to the game against Porto and Seville. Those are the moments. Whereas you don't want, you want fans to think about moments. Oh, remember what he done to Hibs in that cup final with one leg, basically. You didn't want to think about him being a diver or, going down at any sort of contact. And just on your point as well, I do think there is a market out there. I think we're now seeing with clubs maybe having, sort of diversifying their ownership. Obviously, Hibs, Dundee, Aberdeen have got that American style. We've got Chris Mueller coming in from the MLS. There's only a couple of players that we're looking at that side. Furuhashi's success is obviously causing Hearts to look to that side. They're also signing players for the A-League as well. So I think it's good. It's nice. As much as you want to see as much Scottish talent as possible in the league, it is nice to have these sort of exotic, overseas players who bring a wee bit something different to the game.
I'm sure the accountants will be saying that as well when they see the shirt sales coming in from the Far East. No, you're right. Kyogo, I think at times Kyogo's a level above a lot of the players that he plays around. And at times when he finds himself offside, it's because he's making that run that he would know to make, but he's just making it too early and the players aren't finding him. And I think the kind of thing with the centre halves where he's sort of picking his fight, he is trying to stick up for himself, but he needs to stay on his feet a lot more. And I wonder if the additions of the additional Japanese players that Celtic look to be signing in January, if that will sort of weed it out of him, the fact that he's got players that have got the intelligence that he has playing around him, sort of interesting to see where that goes.
It does definitely seem like it seems like it's another Van Dijk type situation where you just, and I think Rangers had it with Boomsong when he signed as well. When these players come in, you can just see right away that they're just that wee bit better than the rest.
And it'll be interesting. I mean, Celtic fans will be desperate to keep on to Kyogo for a number of years, but it would be interesting to see what kind of bids would maybe come in. Probably not in January, but in the summer for him. 2 players left to go in our forward 3. And we're going to start with the man who picked up 12 out of 14 votes. Someone we've already mentioned in today's show. Craig will be delighted to know that joining Kyogo up front is Australian forward Martin Boyle. Now, we spoke about the transformation of Martin Boyle this season. 12 votes out of 14 shows that it's not just Hibs fans that think he's on fire this year.
Definitely. And it's not been since he's been consistent, I would say, for the last, I don't know, maybe, you go back to Boxing Day 2019 with his 2 goals at Tynecastle, playing through the middle.
That's him coming for you now, Greg.
I know Greg remembers that. I know Greg remembers that game well. But no, he has been, and he's, like I said, it's, I think Neil Lennon's given a lot of flack by Hibs fans, but he needs to be given credit when it comes to Boyle, because I think he really started Boyle's game on that other level. Boyle was one of these bit part players. You see these players that hang about clubs for 3-4 years and are never really an automatic starter. They'll maybe get a run of 3-4 games and they don't really go much beyond that. Whereas Boyle has went from that to being arguably Hibs' most important player. It's under Jack Ross anyway. You've seen it in the sort of latter part. If you shut Boyle out of the game, Hibs didn't really have much else going for us. We couldn't really, Nisbet was off form, Doidge was injured. There was no real creative, spark for the side if you shut Boyle out. Obviously, Maloney's came in and we've changed it slightly that Boyle doesn't seem to be relied on so much anymore. But his overall game, in terms of his conversion rate as well, has improved drastically. And I think it's like you say, it's been noticed by not just Hibs fans, but fans all around. I mean, I know we kicked it a bit for a Saudi Arabian team last week as well, but he's up there with Callum McGregor in terms of importance to the club. Like, for me, Martin Boyle at this moment in time is irreplaceable.
Greg, I know this will be difficult, but let's talk up Martin Boyle as a Hearts fan.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I quite like about Martin Boyle is he's came through the leagues as well. I think that's really likeable. I think, especially in Scottish football, we like to think of ourselves as fans and wish we could play for our clubs. And, he started off at Montrose, worked his ways at Dundee in the Championship, and then, as Craig said, it was a part of a swap deal for Alex Harris, and Dundee fans thought they got the better deal. And you look at those career trajectories right now. One's playing in the Lowland League, and one's as your international for Australia and playing really well. And yeah, I echo everything that Craig's been saying. I think he's been fantastic. He's the one sort of constant source of goals for Hibs. There's been talk, obviously, of Nisbet over the last 18 months or so, but Boyle has really brought his goals to the boil for Hibs in those moments. But one thing, obviously, we talked about Kyogo in terms of staying on his feet. I do think Boyle goes down quite easily as well. I mean, that Livingston penalty, very, very soft. But, I mean, to be fair, the penalty didn't go in. And quite luckily, the penalty ball just landed in my garden earlier today, so it was a nice souvenir from Martin. It's just finally came back into orbit after that penalty. But yeah, a really good player. And again, for me, it'd be interesting to see if he would make a move. I think in terms of his family situation, he's quite settled. But Celtic or Rangers, I'd be interested to see if they would approach him. I think he could do well at either side.
I would love to see Martin Boyle at Celtic. I just think now with the extended contract he's on, I don't know if Celtic would sort of put that bid in. What would you think, Craig? What do you think would be an acceptable fee for Martin Boyle?
Start at 10 million and work away. No, I mean, it's difficult. How our record transfer is 4.5 for Scott Brown, and that's 15 years ago, obviously. It would need to be something close to that, I think, in terms of his importance to Hibs. I mean, you're only worth what the selling club want the buying club to pay for. But Celtic have shown how thrifty they are in terms of John McGinn, in the last few years. So I think, like Greg says, Boyle's, his wife plays for the Hibs ladies. They've got their young daughters. I think maybe 2 coming up for 3 now. I think Boyle's time to move would have been last season when the sort of the vultures were circling, so to speak. He signed the extended deal. I think he signed a new extended deal. I think he signed another deal as well. The only issue I would have is that he was quite vocal in talking about Jack Ross. How disappointed he was to see Jack Ross leave, and he only really signed a new contract because of the manager. So as long as I think Maloney and Caldwell and Co can keep him on side, then I think he'll be fine. But for me, it would take close to Hibs' record sale for us to sell him. He's that important to us.
And I think at that, he'll be a Hibs player for another couple of years. I don't think there'll be many teams that would come in and put that sort of money in for him. Not that he's not worth it. I just think at his stage of his career, are you going to get a return on your investment? What are you going to get out of it? I think he'll be at Hibs for another couple of years, definitely.
Certainly hope so.
So we have one position left, and I have to say this one was one of the closer ones. So some honourable mentions for our forward line were Alfredo Morelos, Christian Ramirez of Aberdeen, and the person who misses out by 1 vote, and that is Tony Watt. Tony Watt picked up 7 out of 14. But filling in that last forward role with 8 votes out of 14 is Celtic's Portuguese Lone Star, Jota. Obviously been missing now for a number of weeks, Greg. There's been talk of Celtic making that deal permanent for £6.5 million in January. Considering the form he's been on this season, it seems an absolute no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was late to the Jota party. I seen Celtic fans, kind of raving about him, and for me, looking at him, thinking, who is this sort of young George Michael from Wham? Who is he? But when you actually see him play, he's brilliant. For me, one of the best goals this season you'll see was obviously in the Europa League. That assist for Kyogo, it's amazing. You actually run out of words in terms of how to describe that vision, the technique required to kind of play that pass as well. It's just phenomenal. And I think in terms of his contribution this season, he's been great for Celtic in terms of coming in the clutch moments where you need someone to step up, and he's really taken on the mantle, as you're saying. He's really took the Scottish football with aplomb. And we mentioned about Kyogo. I think he's a player which, if you spend £6.5 million for him now, in a year's time, year and a half, 2 years, you're going to double that, potentially even treble your investment. So for me, I think Celtic need to sign him up. When he does come back into the team, I think it will be a welcome return. Hopefully after the winter break, he'll come back in, and as you're saying, we'll kind of keep doing well for Celtic, and hopefully get himself permanent deal and more attention for Scottish football.
And Craig, they always say the golden rule with loan players is never fall in love with them, because they end up breaking your heart when they don't sign permanently. Jota will break 60,000 Celtic fans' hearts if he doesn't sign. He's just been that good since he's come into the team. His contribution with both goals and assists, and the way that he sort of suits the style of football that Ange Postecoglou's been trying to play, it's almost been a perfect loan spell for him.
It has, and I think that the three of them mesh well together in terms of Kyogo, Abada, and Jota. And when could you ever look back and say that you've had three, a new manager signing 3 attackers for 3 different countries? Probably their English between them is probably not that great. Coming over to a new league where, one of the most expectant fan bases in the country, probably the most expectant fan base in the country, and for the three of them to have sort of, lit the touch paper like they have. We've spoken about Kyogo's importance, but for me, Jota's just, he's in the Aribo category that he gets your bum off your seat when you watch him play. Like Greg says, that pass at Celtic Park for Kyogo in the Europa League was outstanding. But I think there was the one who did Celtic play away the last game, Europa League. It wasn't Leverkusen or Betis. Who else was in Celtic's group?
Ferencváros.
Away to Ferencváros. Was it 3-2, 3-1? I think. And it was either his goal or I'm sure he set a bad up. But
the pass through. Yeah,
the pass through for a bad. And it's just, that is what you watch football for. You watch play because you want to watch a game where something happens and you go, by the way, look at that. Even if it's an opposition player. And that's, for me, what Jota gives. And I think the mix of him and Kyogo and Abada and the sort of resurgence as well of Tom Rogic, the 4 of them together are just a joy to watch at times. And like you say, don't fall in love with loan players because they will break your heart. But if Celtic can get him signed permanently, I agree with Greg, you're looking at treble your investment on that, even within a short space of 6 months, because clubs on the continent and in England will be looking closely at him.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you there. When you look at it, Abada, Jota and Kyogo have both scored and assisted 55 goals already for Celtic this season, and that's with their injury issues. So, as you say, when the forward 3 are on fire for Celtic, they are very difficult to keep up with. So that completes our team of 2021. I'll just take us through it one last time. In goals is Craig Gordon. Our 4 at the back is James Tavernier, John Souttar, Jason Kerr and Josh Doig. In the midfield 3, we have Callum McGregor, Joe Aribo and Ali McCann. And up front, we have Kyogo Furuhashi, Martin Boyle and the aforementioned Jota. Who would be in your team of 2021? Let us know in the comments section below. Remember the rules, you can only pick 3 players from the one team. Let's see. And we will be posting our own teams when this video comes out. So there's a wee hint, we're not actually recording on Hogmanay. We're going to be very drunk as well, but we will be posting our teams on Hogmanay as well. Lads, the year is just about gone. It is about this time of the year where everyone sets their New Year's resolution. I'll not get you to set your personal ones because there could be some very dark ones. We know what happened before Craig had to come on today, so we'll not get into that. But in terms of Scottish football, I'm going to ask for a quick 1-sentence answer. Your New Year's resolution for Scottish football. Craig's still thinking, so I'm going to go to Greg first.
Yeah, typically at New Year, you always think New Year, new me, and I think Scottish football should have a new marketing image. I think we terribly undersell our game. We look towards England. We need something better than that for next year.
Craig is swearing away in the background there. Have you stole your answer there? Is that a wee bit of cheating on the homework?
No, mine's was my New Year's resolution is to market the game better. We so far undersell the league. We need to be getting more money in, more eyes on the product. And for me, that starts with the men at the top.
So, before I say mine, I thought one of you would have said VAR. For or against?
4. 4. Because if it was 4, Hibs would be standing here with a League Cup trophy.
I think the referees, they get questioned a lot, obviously. I think every supporter from Scottish football have questioned them for some shape or another. I do think being a part-time ref doesn't help when if you're working a 12-hour day, doing whatever career some of these guys are involved, minimum involved with. VR, it will only help them if used correctly.
And I'm going to say that's not my New Year's resolution. Mine's is for summer football. Considering what we're kind of going through right now, the fact we've had to take an early winter break because of what's going on in the world, I just think that summer football, it would help Scottish football develop so much. We'd be able to play in the best conditions that we've got, and probably we'd get away with the fact of Chris Boyd not knowing when the fixture schedule has been released. because he made a right pig's ear himself the other week asking when the games would be played. Or maybe that's it. Maybe I'll get rid of Chris Boyd from Scottish football. I don't know.
I'll change mine.
Aye.
Chris Boyd away.
We'll go with that. But what I wouldn't change is the fan base that we've received over the last 12 months of doing this podcast. The friends that we've made from doing this, from people that we didn't know. I know Greg and Craig have been friends for a long time, but we've had some good fun on this show. Every single contributor has been fantastic over this season so far. We look to continue that into 2022 and bring you even more in-depth and balanced coverage of Scottish football. I think we try our very best to do that. Before we do wrap up and before we do say our farewells to 2021, I think it is important that we look back on the year that was and raise a toast to those that we've lost this year, to Sir Walter Smith, to Bertie Auld, to John Slidden, to everyone. I mean, we've lost so many characters this year, Greg. It's been a sad year in terms of Scottish football.
Yeah, some real big characters of Scottish football there, and two you mentioned at the start, both sides of the Glasgow Big Two divide in terms of Sir Walter Smith and Bertie. All these are guys that you kind of grew up watching, and as we'll keep saying through the show, they're guys that are liked no matter their club colours, and yeah, their presence will be missed in Scottish football.
Craig, it was definitely a sad year all round.
No, it was, like you say, I mean, we, more so Celtic, but Bertie Auld obviously had a connection with Hibs as well, and going back to the 80s, I think he got Hibs promoted for one of our many stints in the First Division back in that period. So no, you've seen it. There's only certain figures in the game that can sort of unite everybody. We've seen it with Tommy Burns, when Tommy Burns passed sadly all those years ago, and Walter Smith was another one. He was, someone who almost in a way transcended Scottish football in terms of his legacy, in terms of the man that he was. So no, especially everybody's presence will be missed. But when you look at figures as big as what Bertie and Walter were, their presences will be missed that wee bit more.
Yeah, and it was a sad moment when we found out the passing of those, and for everyone that we've lost in Scottish football. So to you, we raise a toast in your memory. Lads, it's been a fantastic year. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who has participated, has watched. Remember, 50 likes on this video, and Greg's given us his rendition of the Hearts ABBA song. That shouldn't be too hard to do. We will be back in the new year with some live content on the state of Scottish football. But until then, from us to you, to your families, to your friends, stay safe and have a very happy new year when it comes. Take care.